Okay, hi, my name is Em. Today I'm talking about a section from a paper that's published last year, focusing on modeling how human hand interactions aid balance during walking. I'm a grad student at Georgia Tech and Emory University. My advisor is Nina Ting. Okay. So the motivation for this project comes from, we believe that principles learned from physical human-human interaction can inform human-robot interaction. We want to create physical human-robot interactions for physical assistance and rehab. And so we're looking at a specific case of, you've probably noticed that if you're walking and you hold hands with someone, it can help your balance, like if you're walking on a very narrow path. But then we want to understand, how do we implement this sort of behavior in robotic controllers? We did this human subject experiment with unimpaired young adults. One person walked on a very narrow balance beam, and then next to them walked a partner, and they interacted at the hands by holding onto two ends of a force handle. We also had motion capture to measure the movements of the beam walker. And we found that the beam walker performed much better when they had a partner over a number of different metrics. So then we want to figure out, how do these physical interactions aid balance? When we measure the forces at the hands, we found that the lateral Fx and vertical Fc contributions created these opposing torques about the beam axis, acting on the beam walker's body. Now I'm showing some time series data, and you can see that while the torques tend to oscillate back and forth, in general, there's this offset that is opposite in sign due to Fx and Fc. So then we wanted to model these torques. And one way, like using a mechanical model, is the second order model, where we look at the angular displacement of the beam walker's torso relative to this vertical reference line, theta, and then we look at its derivative and its second derivative. And then we have the parameter values for inertia, damping, and stiffness being multiplied by this angular state to create different contributions to the total torque. I'm showing one example data fit. I would call this partnership kind of spring-like. Well, first, the data, the actual torque data, is in gray, the model is in black, and then all the individual contributions from inertia, damping, and stiffness are in the different colors. And you can see the model is very dominated by the stiffness term here. And then in a different pair, for a different trial, you can see that this model is very dominated by the damping term. And so there's different strategies that these partners are using to aid balance, and we can see that played out in the model. So then I take an average for each partnership, and that's one color dot on this plot. And so this is the overall group data for all the different partnerships. And I have the R squared, the quality of fit of the different models, and then the values for inertia, damping, and stiffness. And what you can see is that there's this very interesting trend of opposite signs for the damping and stiffness terms. And so when the sign is smaller than 0, that indicates a passive mechanical element, something that's dissipating energy, that's resisting motion of the beam walker. And when it's positive, that means it's an active element. It's injecting energy into the system, and it's amplifying the beam walker's motion. So in conclusion, we see this principle of opposing dynamics in physical human-human interaction for balance aid that applies to all kinds of physical human-robot interactions, regardless of the hardware. And this model that we created and the parameter estimates can be implemented directly in robotic controllers that use impedance or admittance control. But in the end, some question that does come up is, do these hand interactions primarily serve haptic communication, or are they mechanically altering balance? Because while I'm presenting this as sort of mechanical elements, you can still think of it as maybe these torques are just signaling information related to angular displacement, velocity, or acceleration. And this is a question I continue to work on. And I would love to discuss with people who have good ideas of how to create a metric for haptic communication and the amount of information being exchanged physically. And with that, thank you very much. These are acknowledgements, and this is the link to the paper with much more detail on the human subject experiments and analysis.
Thank you. Exciting one. Do we have any questions? I still have my raised hand from the previous presenter. Okay. We have room again for one question. Maybe I can also ask it then. So I was really thinking about your last question when you were talking about your previous slides, right? So it could be that it's yeah, mechanical altering balance, or it could be some kind of form of haptic communication, but there might also be this proprioceptive aspect here. Have you considered that one?
Okay, sure. But you don't think of that as being haptic communication? It's more just
yeah, I was wondering if you consider it as part of haptic communication.
Sure. I guess you could think of like light touch, for instance. Many people study that when you just hold on with
exactly.
an object, right? And I think we could break it down to one unidirectional versus bidirectional haptic communication, right? If it's just the information's flowing one way versus two ways between two different people. Again, I'm just not sure how to extract metrics related to that, distinguish between the different cases. So if you have ideas, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I think I have a reference in mind, but I don't think it has metrics right away, but I'll share it with you.
Cool, thank you.
Great. With that, let's thank Em once again, and we'll move to the last talk of today.